Hi, everyone. Good afternoon from Evans Hall here in New Haven, Connecticut at the Yale School of Management. Thank you so much for joining us today on our webinar, where we'll be talking a little bit about the MBA for Executives program and focusing most intensely on our round 2 application deadline of January 30th and giving you some great tips and tricks to create and submit your most promising application for our program. My name is Joanne Legler, and I'm the Director of Admissions for the MBA for Executives program, and I'm lucky enough to be joined today by my colleague, Maria Stutzman Marquez.
Hi, thanks for having us here, and thank you for joining us today.
We're going to be talking a little bit about the program today, but really going to be spending the bulk of our time on our application, giving you some really great insights into how we think about, how we evaluate applications. So really the bulk of the time is going to be talking about the application process and, again, tips and tricks. If you're not really that familiar yet with the MBA for Executives program, I would absolutely encourage you to go back to some of our previously recorded webinars, particularly the ones that are labeled information sessions, to get a much greater insight into the program structure, how many students we have in our classes, our areas of focus, our core curriculum, all these wonderful components that make the program as unique as it is. But today we're going to be focusing a little bit more on the application process itself. We have some terrific webinars out there, so please go ahead and take a look at those. And we'll get started in talking about SOM, but in brief. So it's a great place to start. Let's talk about Yale University. We're lucky enough to call this our home university. As you probably know, Yale is one of the oldest universities in the country, and we're lucky enough to be able to draw on all the wonderful resources, the alumni network, the buildings and facilities, the speakers who come to campus as a university. But by contrast, Yale SOM is quite small, and it's actually really quite new. We're the newest kid on the block. We're the fastest growing graduate program here at Yale University. And the really great benefit there is that it allows us to be quite innovative. We're not really tied to old ways of thinking or doing things. We're a small enough program to be able to be nimble and respond to different changes in society, in the world, global politics. And so we're really lucky to have the best of both worlds, a really wonderful, rich tradition and history of one of the greatest universities in the world, and then this smaller group of a much more innovative, newer, fast-growing program here at the School of Management. And that allows us to have a really interesting, globally minded, dynamic community as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about our community today, and then we're going to focus, as I said, mostly on the admissions process, the application components. We'll do some Q&A, and then we'll talk about what your next steps might be if you're considering an application for the start of the program in 2020 or perhaps beyond. If you have any questions, we do encourage you to go ahead and submit those in our chat feature at any time. Our colleague Liz, Assistant Director of Admissions, is on the back end fielding your questions. So please go ahead and submit those anytime you like. A great place to start talking about SOM, our community, anything related to the School of Management is to talk about our mission. It's to educate leaders for business and society. This is the school's founding mission, and it's one that we deeply resonate with here as staff, as students, faculty. If you ask anybody in the building at any time, they'll be able to rattle this off pretty easily. Our mission to educate leaders for business and society really stems from wanting to do good in the world as we're doing really good work in our individual businesses and our companies. It really resonates with those who have a strong sense of purpose for what they do and who want to leave having a really immediate impact, but a lasting impact on their organizations and communities as well. So if this feels good and resonates well with you, then you're definitely at least in the right place to think about where you might want to do your MBA education. A community of purpose, this is something that's actually quite meaningful for us. And there's a lot of words that we'll use to describe our community. I describe them as engaged, non-transactional. These are people who come to an MBA program or an MBA program, again, with a strong sense of purpose and wanting to be part of a community instead of just kind of clocking in and clocking out. They are inspired and inspiring. Our class is really made up of a number of really wonderful students who do really cool, interesting things that might spark something else in you. Mission-driven, passionate about what they do, interested in solving some of the more real-world complex issues that they're facing in their day-to-day at their work or their companies. And they really see themselves as leaders at the nexus of business and society. So these are people who are really seeking to get those fundamental business skills, learn how to be managers and leaders, and then again, think about how that legacy is going to be left, that impact on the world, what they're going to do that makes the world a little bit of a better place than when they first found it before they came here. So who is this MBA for? Who is an executive MBA for, particularly here at the Yale School of Management? For us, we really think about experienced folks who are maybe mid-career, thinking about maybe making a shift or accelerating their career up to a leadership level. They're people who have had a demonstrated career evolution up to this point, have moved up from an entry-level position to starting to manage a few people, maybe manage a budget, maybe managing a team, maybe even managing a company or an organization. And people who are ready to accelerate that even faster than perhaps without the MBA or the MBA, and really want to have access to all the wonderful opportunities and resources that a Yale MBA can provide. So fundamentally, if this sounds like you, if you're ready to take that next step, learn all these great fundamentals while accelerating your career through opportunities to learn how to lead, your leadership style, networking here, then this is definitely the next step for you in terms of your business education. And another great place to land is to talk about our current class. This is the class of 2021. These folks started the program, feels like much longer ago, but about 6 months ago. And they are 74 strong. And we're really excited by the diversity of backgrounds and experiences that our students brought. 13 years of work experience on average. The class is 36% women. About 40% have advanced degrees. That's not unusual for us at all. 13 citizenships represented in the class, and on average about 37 years of age. So again, this is a really solid profile. This mirrors the class of 2020, which is our second year class about to graduate in just a few months. So again, if you're thinking about whether or not you fit from a profile perspective, this is a really great place to start. All right, that's a really brief overview of our program. Again, I really encourage you to come to our information sessions, hop online, check out our previously recorded webinars, come talk to us. We'll talk to you a bit about next steps towards the end. But let's transition into talking about the application process. And I'm going to turn it over to Maria to get us started. And we'll go through, again, elements of the application and then some tips we can offer as well throughout the process.
Thanks, Joanne.
My pleasure.
It's always so nice to see our students on those photos and stuff like that coming through because, you know, we have such connectedness here as a program and with the staff, the faculty. It is a really welcoming community. And so it's nice to see some familiar faces. Okay. So this is a really great time to submit questions to Liz because as we're going through each of the components and talking about the admissions process overall, we'll be able to answer in real time as best we can. So just to give you kind of a big overview of the admissions process, we are very intentional and we have concerted effort and put in a lot of time to go through and review applications. Our admissions committee is really thoughtful about reading through each of the applications because our intention is to really get to know more about each applicant, both on a personal and professional level. And so we want to make sure that we have a really good sense about who you are and what you're coming here to this program to do and kind of what those expectations will be beyond this program. As Joanne mentioned, living and really living the mission ultimately. So the application process as a whole is we only have 2 more rounds. So we'll have one January 30th and also March 30th upcoming. And we don't do any rolling admissions. So all of the applications are due by that deadline. And then the admissions committee takes on the reading of all applications. Once the application has been read by all of the admissions committee staff, it's reviewed, and then those who we feel have the most promising applications and opportunities, we will then be invited to interview dates. Those are very important dates. Well, Joanne will speak to those a little bit later. After the interview day is complete, then all of that information, all of the new data is pulled back together for the admissions committee for another review, and then final decisions are released. So it is a very step-by-step process, but one that's really well curated and considered. So this is a great slide here because it's just a snapshot of the components that we'll go through today. But what I'd really like for you to pay attention to are the upcoming deadlines, the interview dates, and the decision release dates. Oftentimes, these are really kind of the touch points for our process to kick off, but also really important for you to know as an applicant. So note that January 30th is the application deadline. Interview dates, please mark your calendars, February 21st, 22nd, and potentially March 6th. And then all decisions will be released by April 14th. And then for round 3, if you're considering, that will be March 30th, and then interview dates April 17th and 18th, which are usually class weekends for the interview dates. So you'll have a much broader experience other than just interviewing. And then the final decision release will be May 12th. So we have a lot to cover in this session today, and I want to make sure that we are able to provide you with the insights that you deserve and need as you're curating and putting together your application. So we'll kick off now with the resume. So Joanne, I know that as the Director of Admissions, like this is a really critical piece here, and I wonder what you're looking for as you're reviewing the resume. What's really important for you?
It's a great place to start because I think it feels like the easiest thing to do. Oh yeah, I already have a resume, let me polish it, update it, and just send it in. It tends to be overlooked in that case, and students will sometimes submit a resume that's a bit more job application ready than it is necessarily application for business school ready. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes you've had a long career. You could go on for 3 or 4 pages. You want to add every piece of research that you've done, every talk that you've been featured at, and it gets a little long for us. We're looking for more of a snapshot. Sometimes you have a ton of responsibilities. How can you curate that down to a list of your most critical responsibilities and accomplishments rather than just sort of this long bulleted laundry list of everything that you do on a regular basis? So it's worth taking a minute to determine whether or not your current resume is in an appropriate format for a busy admissions committee that's reading hundreds of applications. What do you critically need us to know, and what's important for us to see? Other tips and tricks, 1 to 2 pages max is a good sort of rule of thumb. If it needs to be longer than that, if it has been longer than that in the past, I think that's okay. But again, really with an eye toward what the admissions committee, in a review of your application, this is being one of many components, critically needs to know in a quick, 1 to 2 or perhaps slightly more page document. You will want to include all your work experience. It's critically important for us, sort of going back to answer your question, to understand your progression, your evolution through your experience, even if that means you started somewhere quite different than where you've ended up most recently. It's really interesting for us and critical to understand how you got from where you were when you maybe first graduated from college or graduate school up through where you might be right now. So do include everything. That also prevents us from potentially misreading a lapse or a gap, and if you have those, we can talk about that too. But make sure it's clean, easy to read with the most critical stuff included and maybe some of the extraneous stuff excluded at this point. If you work for a company that's a startup, if you work for a company that we might not recognize or we might have a hard time Googling, please take the opportunity to use the resume to parenthetically explain this company does this. Or perhaps you want to make a note that says, hey, I started here and now I'm here. Those are all okay things to do within a resume. There really are no hard and fast rules. If you want to put in some passion projects that you have, particularly if it's something that shows a ton of commitment, something that you've been passionate about for a long time and there's a history of you being involved, that's okay to add to a resume as well, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I really like what you say there about the progression and the evolution, because it's really about the history of somebody's leadership, and it shows us more about what you've already done that's had meaningful leadership, but also what you have ahead of you as well. So speaking about building your story, I hope I'm speaking for all of the admissions committee here when I say that this is such a fun time for us to read the essays. And so what would you say are some of the most critical pieces about, really piecing together essays that are really strong?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the essay is the story. It's the meat. It's the part where we get to know each of our applicants a little bit better. And sometimes we'll make slight changes to the wording of the essay, but the essence of what we're looking for is sort of always going to stay the same. We've included the essay prompts here, and it's, I think, fairly straightforward. I think people sometimes get tripped up on wanting to tell us everything, and I guess my biggest sort of overall piece of advice is to trust in us as a committee. We've been here, we've done that. It's not our first time going through the process, and we've really carefully curated these essay questions down to the word to determine what it is we want you to tell us. And so answer the question. It's always the best advice that I can give anybody. It's pretty straightforward. This one, motivation. Why now? Why is this a great time in your career to perhaps do this? What is it about the area of focus that we offer here at SOM? That's a pretty unique feature of our program, to have our 3 areas of focus. Why does this one make sense? You will have to choose one within the application. So talk to us about why that's a passion for you and what you want to do to advance your career in that specific space. Tell us what your goals are. You must be doing this for a reason, so it's important for us to understand what you hope to get out of this at the end. We don't necessarily expect it or anticipate that it's going to be a major career shift or change, but again, you must be doing this for some reason. What is it that you hope to get out of the program? It might not necessarily be a new job or new career, but perhaps it's leadership skill, management skill, learning the fundamentals of business. What are your motivations for doing the program? Why is the timing quite right? Again, answer the question. This is probably the most straightforward thing you're going to do in the entire application. The second essay is a little bit different. For us, it's our way to understand you a little bit better and what some of your passions or interests might be. Sometimes folks ask us about this essay question and assume it has to relate back to somebody's professional passions, and it doesn't necessarily. Hopefully you're a multifaceted person with lots of interests, so even if you are in finance, perhaps you have a strong passion for the homeless population in your community, or first-generation college students, or you are a Boy Scout leader, or you mentor young people. Tell us a little bit about that and tie it to a statistic that's sort of fueled that passion and that interest for you. In all cases, we're also looking for communication skills. Can you write? Can you communicate? Can you do it succinctly? Can you do it in a way that lets the committee know that you're serious about this as an academic pursuit? And so proofread. The spell check feature doesn't always catch everything. Have somebody else take a look at your essays. Get a little bit of help. It's okay to ask somebody else to just make sure that you haven't made any silly mistakes, and to make sure that you are communicating most effectively and what it is that you actually do want to communicate. So. Anything else that you'd add to that, Maria?
I think I would say that something about the word count. This is intentional. We have limited the word count so that you are basically honing in on that which is most important for you to share. And I think many applicants have said it's a bit of a soul-searching experience to kind of whittle down the writing to that length, but we do hope that you can stay within that ballpark. So
I think there's just, we're asking for a lot of trust from our students in our intentions and abilities as a committee. So trust us that we've asked this exactly the way we want to, and that if you're offered an opportunity to interview, we're really looking forward to digging in a little bit more. So speaking in part about the interview, the next topic we're going to tackle is employer approval. And so Maria, how critical is this, would you say, to our process and then for the students as well? Why do we do this? What's the purpose?
Yeah, and I'm going to take this a little bit beyond just for this application. I think securing all of the stakeholders' buy-in that you can is really critical to ensuring a really successful experience through the program. So the employer approval, as it relates to the application, is really just an opportunity for you to get that, for us to check the box that you've had those conversations with your employer, that they are well aware of the potentially over 60 days out of the office that you'll be spending here at Yale SOM. And we want to make sure that everything's aligned for you, so that when you get started, this is a really nice transition, that the people who you delegate work to, they're well aware of it, so that the people that you manage up to, they have, you have their full support. And of course, this goes beyond. Obviously, we're not sending out emails to family or friends, but I would definitely encourage you to get all of your community's buy-in, so that you have a champion. That will be an advocate and will support you throughout this process. So the logistics of this is that this is required for an interview. So this is, so figure out who your approver will be. That could be somebody like your direct supervisor. It could be your HR liaison. We need somebody who will be sent this email. They will sign it, document it. That will be sent back into your application. And again, this isn't sent out until you've been invited to interview. So, but everybody's required to do this. Even if you're self-employed, we need for you to sign it and send it to us. But that's really the nuts and bolts. But I think the bigger takeaway here is just make sure that everybody is really well aware that you intend to do this program and that you have their support.
And other people who might be aware are those who might write your letter of recommendation. Obviously, you would never want this to come as a surprise to anybody. If you're thinking about a round 2 application, my fervent hope at this point is that you've already identified these folks and had a conversation with them, where we get a ton of questions about the letters of recommendation. It can be awkward, it can be a little bit panic-inducing, but it doesn't have to be. So why are these letters important? Who should they come from? What would be some advice to give to our students?
Yeah. I think just in terms of people who you might be considering, we definitely as a committee wish to see a letter of recommendation from your current supervisor. We think that's really critical to your success here, and it also gives us a good sense of your performance, your potential, and the alignment with maybe the organizational goals of the company, and as it relates to you building your business acumen and then really being able to provide some of the information that you learn here back to the organization. So there's a lot of value exchange that's happening, and so we hope that your employer really understands that, or at least your direct supervisor. I think after that, you have an option to provide another recommendation from somebody internally within your organization, maybe who you've worked with on a big project before, somebody who's a colleague, but also clients. So if there are clients that you've had for a number of years and you've been working with them quite in depth, that they would be somebody great to write the letter of recommendation. Mentors, colleagues that you've had, actually supervisors that you've had from other organizations are also great recommenders as well. And then I think, Joanne, what you were mentioning earlier is where it can get a little tricky, is when you may be in a situation where you have a new manager, and so they may not be able to write at the level of depth that you'd wish for this recommendation. So you might want to this is probably the only time that you'd have like a third recommender, and you'd want your former or your most recent supervisor write that recommendation. I'm trying to think about other situations that students have been in. I think oftentimes when people are applying, sometimes there's organizational change. You can't control for that. So when that's happening, certainly you can always schedule a call with one of us here on the team to kind of talk through what situation you're in and how best to navigate that in terms of the letters of recommendation. But I think anybody who can speak to your performance, who understand your goals and your motivation to do this, and is also quite supportive of you, I think those are probably the three top choices.
And in terms of logistics, again, getting this well in advance, sitting down with your recommender is really important. It's not cheating to sit down with them and share with them your goals and ambitions and motivations for doing the program, maybe giving them your resume, sharing your essay, maybe not directly with them, but talking about what you talked about in your essay. Give them all the ammunition and information that they need to write you a good, positive, robust letter of recommendation, and those should be submitted by the deadline.
Absolutely. One thing that I think you mentioned before was that if anybody, if you have a recommender who is very busy and they say, could you just draft the letter? Maybe not, maybe find somebody else at that point, because, it's just, we really want it to be directly from that referee. So that's just a tip.
Great advice.
So, one of the components of the application process is to really better understand academic potential. We talk about this a lot, about the rigor of the program and the expectation. For people who are juggling full-time roles with significant leadership experience, who also have family or other commitments to their community. And I think academic readiness and preparedness is critical. So how do test scores fit into this? What are we really looking for here?
I mean, I don't know about you, but it seems sometimes that people panic at this point, right? And in the past, I feel like it's been the thing that has maybe led people away from even considering an MBA, thinking about, having the time to do a test, thinking about time to prep, or anxiety that might come around having to sit down and actually take a test when somebody maybe hasn't done that in a really long time. I just wrote a blog post on this topic not that long ago. And so we're here to sort of, take the mystery out of it and hopefully reduce some of the anxiety around it. We do ask for a test score. This is not optional. Some schools may waive or give options for folks with a number of years of work experience, and the short answer for us is we just don't do that. So you will be required to submit something. Why do we do this? Why do we put you through this? We really have to have something that indicates a potential for academic success in the classroom. Because our students have been out of school for so long, in many cases, it's a great recent indication of your ability to be successful in the classroom in a rigorous MBA program. We will take one of 3 exams, the GMAT, the GRE, or the executive assessment. We call it the EA for short. We've just completed a wonderful webinar on the executive assessment with our friend Eric Chambers from GMAC, the organization that administers the EA exam as well as the GMAT. That'll be up on our website pretty soon, so I'll encourage you to look at that. If you know nothing about the executive assessment, it's a great place to learn more and to start. You're welcome to take a GMAT or GRE. Perhaps you have already taken a GMAT or GRE, and we're happy to take your scores if they're valid, which means that you've taken them in the last 5 years prior to the application deadline. Practice exams and test prep are available for free on the websites for the testing organizations. For the EA, there's some free stuff, then there's some stuff that's available for a small fee. I would highly encourage you to go ahead and download that. That's great preparation material. And then you'll obviously have to take the exam. So just making sure that from a timing perspective, you're leaving enough time to prep. For the EA, we suggest about 30 hours or so of prep time, which really isn't that much if you think about spreading it out over a couple of weeks. But going in cold is never recommended. So give yourself some time to prep, get familiar with the exam format, find the place where you're going to take the exam, and then go ahead and give it a shot. But give yourself enough time to do all of that to meet our application deadlines. We do require this to get even started reading your application. So if the answer is, can I take it a few weeks after the deadline? Unfortunately for us, the answer is no. You're welcome to apply then in a later deadline, but we do move pretty quickly here. So try not to be too nervous. You can do this. The preparation required, especially on the executive assessment side, isn't really that bad. The test itself does move pretty quickly as well. It's about an hour and a half. You took it yourself. You know more than anybody about what it's like. Don't let this be the barrier to an application or not application, even if it means maybe applying in the slightly later round.
Yeah, and I think, so on the webinar that we did with Eric Chambers, we had 3 of our students on that, and they answered questions about using the test as kind of a proxy to what it might be like to return to school setting, an academic setting. Yep. So you might want to think about it as, set up your schedule to see, what it might look like for you during the week to have 20 hours of studying to do, along with all of your other commitments.
Yeah, when we hear from students that they don't have time to take a test, it's not a great sign that they have the time to do the program, and so I really agree with that sentiment.
And so here's another piece of academic readiness that we review. Can you tell us a little bit more about, I guess, the meaningfulness of transcripts through the review process?
Yeah, and sort of the mechanics of it as well. We need to know, obviously, where you went to school, how you did, what classes you took. Again, this is all towards the idea of being prepared and ready to be back in a classroom, and so our grades are important, your grades are important to us. What classes did you choose? How challenging was your curriculum? What were your grades? We don't necessarily expect everybody to have straight A's, but we need some indication and some evidence that there's ability and potential for success in a rigorous, fast-paced environment like we have here at the Yale School of Management MBA for Executives program. So that's the meaning behind it, but really it's a little bit of detective work. So putting together transcripts, any other certificates or degrees that you might have done, plus that most recent less than 5 years testing, puts it all together for us to help us paint a picture to answer the question, can this person not only survive, but thrive here academically? It is intense. We want to make sure we're setting everybody up for success. So that's sort of the meaning behind everything. The mechanics of it, we do need you to have done an undergraduate or some equivalent to that before you're able to enter the program here. Transcripts are required for you to consider your application complete. I'll just take a photocopy of what you have lying around or what you can pull off of your institution's website, but at the very least, it should have things like your name, the school you went to, indication that you successfully graduated from this program and your degree was conferred. Should be readable. Some students might have a little bit of trouble doing that if they went to a school that's smaller, some international programs. It's a little harder to obtain those. So don't take it for granted that it's just available to you. Make sure you have the time to go ahead and submit that as part of your application. And we'll need it from every school that you attended, including the ones that are graduate programs, undergraduate programs, 2-year programs. Get it all into us. If your official transcripts are not in English, or your unofficial ones, we'll have to get those notarized. We unfortunately don't have the staff here to do translations, so just make sure that you make that happen before you submit that to our program. So the mechanics of it are fairly straightforward, but there may be a little bit of gymnastics there to make sure that you get us what we need on time.
Yeah, often I get the question about certificates
Yeah.
for different programs. We don't necessarily need those. We're really looking at your undergraduate and graduate record.
Yep.
But I do have a question going back to test scores. And I think, the question is, do we have a minimum score that we require on the EA?
Good question.
And I think to your point of setting up our students for success, I think the reason why we're here is to set you up for success as well. So what do you think about that?
So the test is scored up to a 200, although I don't think that score is actually possible to obtain. What we've seen globally is that students are at the very most able to score about a 180. For our program, what we've done over the last several years is watched other schools do validity studies. This test was validated in a number of different ways with a number of different schools prior to our adoption of it. And so we feel really good about its purpose, which is to indicate whether or not somebody can be successful in a core curriculum in an MBA program. So far, the facts and the research seems to indicate that about a 150 leads to good success in the program. So I think that's the good thing to shoot for is about that. There are subsections. They each are scored on a 1 to 20 scale, and so a 10 feels like a good number to shoot for on each subsection as well. So if you go and take the test tomorrow and you come out with a 145, should you abandon all plans to apply to the Yale School of Management or any other MBA program? I would say no. Come talk to us, and we're happy to either indicate maybe potentially advising a retake. You can take the EA exam twice in a lifetime at this point. That might change in future years. Or we may say, hey, you know what, we're really satisfied with where your subsections are combined with your transcripts. We feel like this is an okay score to apply with. At the end, it's up to you. You need to apply with the score that you're most confident with and you feel is the best reflection of your skills and abilities. On the GMAT and GRE side of things, we have so few now taking these other exams that we don't really put out there a minimum score or an average score or anything like that. We don't have any minimums required to apply. Apply with the score that you feel like is the best representation of you as an applicant.
Yeah, and to go back to this idea, we have another question here talking about weighting.
Yeah.
Like, do we weight test scores over transcripts or undergraduate GPAs?
Yeah.
And how does that all play a part of the overall application?
I mean, I'm super visual. I feel like it's a puzzle for me, and all the pieces have to sort of make a good picture. And the academic piece, I think, for me, is probably one of the most critical, if not the most critical and important pieces of the process. But what we're trying to do is sort of build to this idea that somebody is capable of being, again, we said it before, not only surviving here, but thriving here academically. So we don't want to put somebody in a situation where they're struggling every single day just to get through the core curriculum or the classes from week to week. So really all of those things are important. None of them weighs more than the other. If we saw an incredibly low test score, we'd have a lot of questions about that person and whether or not, again, there's an indication of an ability to be successful here. But it's not about the score. It's about what the score represents, which is whether or not we can, reasonably put somebody in a really high functioning and intensive program and hope that they do really well. And that's really what it's about. It all matters.
Well, yeah, thank you for that. And so here's kind of one of the pieces of the application process, although it's kind of like the second step in the process. So, when I talk to people on the phone, this is kind of there's some mystery around the interviews.
Sure.
And so let's just put it out there.
What
are our interviews about? What are we looking for here? And what happens on an interview day?
It's a busy day. It's so exciting and energetic, though. It's a fun day. There's definitely a nervous energy. We're a little nervous. Our candidates are a little bit nervous, but it's also a really fun day for us to get to know our candidates, but for them to kick the tires on this program as well. So we're definitely putting our best foot forward, and of course, we're expecting you to do the same thing. Mechanically, you have to be invited to interview, and unfortunately, we're not able to invite everybody to interview. So if you make it to this step in the process, this is fantastic. Our interviews are conducted by our staff, myself, Maria, our other staff mates, and alumni, which is, I think, worth mentioning because it means our alumni are volunteering their time to come back. They believe so much in the program and their ability to have an impact that they come back and help us out with this, which is great. Our faculty are here to help interview as well. So it's a really full, robust day. It is required for you to be admitted to the program, and it takes place here at Evans Hall in New Haven. The interview days are here. These are always subject to change, but it's good to pencil them in as you're thinking about travel and work and things like that. We're just trying to get to know you a little bit better. So it's good to come into the interview prepared, look over your resume, remind yourself of what you wrote in your essays, and be prepared to be asked about all of those things, as well as talk about your motivation for being here, potentially being here at Yale, and ask us some questions. We want to know that you're interested in us as well. So preparation is key. Don't forget the basics. We certainly expect you to come dressed in a professional way. We expect you to come with a copy of your resume and just be ready. Think of it as a job interview in some ways. But you can relax a tiny bit from a job interview. We do hope that this is conversational and back and forth.
Yeah, thank you. So we're moving on, and we have received some other questions that we hope to get to as well. I wanted to cover some of the optional components. So in your application, you'll notice that there is space to do both an additional information section and then also scholarship information. So the additional information is really can be critical to your application. Joanne mentioned in the resume that there might be some unclear gaps in your work experience, or you may have shifted from one industry to another, or it could be a number of different things within that resume. So if there's anything that you want to explain further, I would take this time to spend like 2 to 3 sentences writing down, just in maybe even bullet form, what the discrepancies were or any gaps in your experience. Another opportunity here, we just spent some time talking about test scores and undergraduate GPAs and graduate records. So now is like this optional essay is perfect for explaining, what happened during undergraduate that may have resulted in a lower GPA or lower test scores. We really appreciate that awareness and also the story behind it, because as we know, what we know to be true is that not all of us have like these very crafted, very traditional lines of education, and so figuring out what that story is really helpful for the admissions committee. Somebody asked a question about managerial support or organizational change and potentially not being able to get their direct supervisor to write the recommendation because that person may be not as hands-on and may not know their work performance. So if you decide to use a third recommender, this would be a great space to talk about why you've chosen the 3 and what you hope each will bring to kind of telling the story about who you are as an employee and as a professional. So those are usually like the 3 most referenced points within the optional essay. But this isn't an essay to add on and write another essay about a life situation or anything to bring in that would not be critical for the admissions committee. So we are reading a lot, and we want to, as I said, we're very intentional and thoughtful, and so we hope that as you're considering this additional information that you would do the same. I'm trying to think about anything else. Does that seem? Yeah, okay, all right. So next up is scholarship. So on the application, there's a section here where you can sign off to denote whether or not you'd like to be considered for scholarship. We have a very limited pool of funds for scholarships throughout each of the rounds. And so if you would like to be, oh my gosh, why is my brain considered? Thank you.
And need-based,
One of the things that we look at first is financial needs. So these are very much focused on need-based scholarships. And then we'll look at merit and unique perspectives. So what you'll have to do first is complete the FAFSA, and we hope that you do that by the time that you've applied for the application. So by January 30th and by March 30th, you can actually open the FAFSA now. And if you were back in the day when you had to use paper form to fill out the FAFSA, it has changed completely. I think it takes only 45 minutes to complete now, so it's fantastic. So fill out the FAFSA. We're asking for a short paragraph that really speaks to your need and unique merit and unique perspective and merit, and then it'll be considered after you have been admitted to the program or upon the same decision timeline. So you'll hear about that, but I would encourage you to apply if you feel that you qualify for the need, and then it'll be reviewed. Anything else to add there?
No, that's fantastic.
Okay. All right, next is one thing that is new to our program. We're in the second year, is the Commonwealth, it's now the Posen Commonwealth Fund Fellowship. This is a fully funded grant, essentially, to the MBA for Executives program. And it's specifically for practitioners and clinicians who are working within vulnerable populations and really have a focus towards advancing health equity issues. So if you fall into that category and you've applied to the healthcare focus area, you'll note that there is a time where you can check off that you'd like to apply for the Commonwealth. If you'd like to learn more about that, I would certainly direct you to, we've had a webinar with our faculty directors, Dr. Howard Foreman and Dr. Marcela Nunez-Smith. We recently put up a student-run webinar, a panel of peers with our 3 inaugural fellows, which you should listen to learn more. And then, of course, you can always do a pre-assessment or give one of us a call to chat further about your qualifications for this fellowship. So we have about 5 minutes left.
Great.
And we have a number of questions that have come in. So I'm going to look at my screen and kind of field them to you,
Yeah,
Joanne.
I'm happy to take those. Thank you for submitting those questions to us.
Yeah, one of them says that, what would you say is the major difference with our process in reviewing applications for the round 2 deadline as opposed to the round 1? And is that, or even the third round, is an earlier application advantageous?
I'd say there's zero difference. We're going to evaluate applications the same way from one round to another. Is there a difference? Sometimes. From round 1 to round 2, we typically see a number of applications that allow us to fill a good number of spots in the class. Our incoming class each year is about 75 students. And so there have been years in which round 3 gets a little dicey because we've already had so many wonderful applicants who have chosen us. We've been lucky enough for them to choose us as their program to pursue their EMBA. So in some years, that means that there's been a little bit less space left for the same number or even a greater number of applicants per round. So is it better to apply earlier? In some ways, maybe yes. In some years, maybe yes. However, we're always very sort of adamant that there is space for our most talented students and most competitive students regardless of round. So if you are thinking about a round 2 application, you still have several weeks to go. I'd say go ahead and if you are partway there, do what you can to finish up and apply by our round 2 deadline. If that, however, results in sort of a subpar effort, or you don't have enough time to take the executive assessment the way that you want to, or any other things come up, then round 3 is still a wonderful choice. In the worst case scenario where things don't quite work out the way that you were hoping to, we are happy to talk to you about a reapplication for a future year, but let's not go there quite yet. I'd say for this point, early January, a round 2 application is still very possible, and then round 3 is right around the corner after that. So choose the round that you feel like is going to be what allows you to present the best application possible.
Yeah, and to that point, I think that, because we have such a unique approach to reading applications, like it's very clear when somebody has rushed through something and they haven't really spent a lot of time really, documenting their personal history or their professional. So definitely take your time. Like Joanne said earlier, have somebody else read your application, to make sure that it's all aligned. So this is an interesting question because you mentioned transcripts from international schools. That are also, this question is very specific. So there's a school that's taught in English, a school in Scotland. Do you require an agency to convert it to a US grading
good question.
system?
Please don't. You have to, again, trust in the process and the wisdom and expertise of our staff. Among us, we have hundreds of years of experience with admissions at this point. We've seen it all. If we have a question, we will ask. So no, please don't convert anything. Just send us a copy of your unofficial transcript and allow us to determine what we think your performance was in the greater context of your school or of your program. If we're not sure or we have questions, we have a number of resources here just within the School of Management. And if we're really stuck, we'll give you a call and ask you to help us out.
Yeah, and this might also be a good opportunity in the additional information section just to write a brief, couple lines about the grading system if you feel that's important. But otherwise,
Otherwise, we Google. We get online and we find the information that we need. Again, we're resourceful, both using the interwebs as well as all of our wonderful resources here within the School of Management. So don't worry about it. If we have questions, we'll get in touch.
I think we have one more question, and Ooh, this is a good one and very important. Will I be eligible for the program if I'm not currently working full-time?
Tough question. We'd love to talk to you about that. It's probably a better conversation because the short answer is sort of no. We do require all of our students to be employed full-time throughout the duration of the program. So if you're currently unemployed or not working, that's going to be tough for us to consider given the enriching experience that you bring to the classroom by being a full-time employee at a company or organization. So to not be able to bring that, even if you think you can because you've sort of been there in the past, is tough for us. It doesn't really quite equalize out for everybody. You may be taking away more than you're offering your classmates. So I'd say probably really no, but if you have plans to be employed very soon, you're in the middle of a negotiation for a new opportunity, we can definitely work with that, but I would say it might be worth having a quick conversation with one of us. We have a lot of opportunities coming up for one-to-ones, pre-assessments, phone calls, and emails. But I guess I'd say the short answer is kind of no.
Yeah. Thanks, Joanne.
Yep.
So any final advice that you would offer the audience?
Yeah, I think my biggest piece of advice is about planning, and that's sort of an ironic thing to say at the beginning of January with our deadline, 3 and change weeks away. But it does take a minute to really be thoughtful about this, and so planning is going to be your best friend, whether that's planning for the executive assessment, planning to reach out to your recommenders to give them enough time, planning to outline and then write your essays, planning to get it in on time to hit the submit button, and then planning for the program. So, planning for the best case outcome, which is to be admitted and enrolled in the program. It's not too early to start having those conversations, like you said, about those stakeholders, whether that's your partner or spouse, your kids, your boss, the rest of your village that makes this possible for you to do, on a semi-daily basis. So planning ahead all the way through graduation, even at this early stage, you'll bring that to the interview with you or to your essay with you. That's really important to us, is for us to understand that you, for lack of a better term, get it and kind of know what you're getting yourself into. So planning for each step of the application and for the program itself can be a really great use of your time as you're sort of doing that soul searching that you talked about to determine if an application is in your future.
Yeah, and I think that my advice is very aligned with yours, is do the research.
Yeah.
So really learn about the program. This is something that you can do through the pre-assessment, and I'm going to skip forward a little bit through pre-assessment. Meet us out on the road, come to campus, sit in on a class. We have information sessions coming up in February and in March, and then just be in touch with us.
Sure.
And I think do the research, learn about the faculty, learn about the focus areas, and really get a sense of who we are as a community and what our curriculum can deliver and how it can really have that impact on you. But I know that we're just over time now. Just a big thank you for being here with us for these last 45 minutes. We hope that you gained a ton of new insights. And if you have any other questions, of course, feel free to reach out to us. We're always available and happy to help. Joanne, any other parting words?
No, thank you for being such a great resource for our students, and we're looking forward to meeting you out on the road, in person here, perhaps on a phone call. So, but thank you, Maria, for all of your insights.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today, everybody. Best of luck with your applications.